Testament, uh, it is replete with demon possessions and casting out of demons, and the description of Paul about principalities and powers of the air, and hence the New Testament revolves around the notion of spirit world and the devil and the demons and the casting out of demons. But you don't see that in the Tanakh. What seems to be the big difference here?
The difference is that in the ancient world, people were like today, many people suffered from mental illness. That's the truth. Truth is, think of all the people you know of that suffer from schizophrenia, paranoid schizophrenia, people who suffer from borderline personalities, people who suffer from just so many mental illnesses. And when you meet someone who suffers from mental illness, two things should happen. You should feel very sorry for that person and try to get that person help. And the second thing is you should thank God that your brain works. I mean it. And I think that every person listening to my voice right now knows exactly what I'm talking about. But in the ancient world, they didn't understand any of this. In the ancient world, people who suffered from psychosis in particular psychosis, and psychosis typically is displayed by people hearing voices that aren't there and seeing things that aren't there. And it goes on and on. The paranoia that seizes the mind of the schizophrenic is something that's... We're living in a time when these ailments, these very, very severe ailments, are treatable. We're very fortunate. Doesn't mean that they're not chronic. They're chronic. But there are treatments that are available so that people who suffer from all kinds of neuroses and psychoses can cope. Not everyone, but many can. Thank God we have all sorts of Haldol and lithium, but they didn't have this in the ancient world, nor did they understand these maladies as mental illness. They didn't understand that. To them, the mental illness that unfortunately so many people suffer from was considered a devil, a demon that had to be cast out using incantations. You're right. You see it all over the Christian Bible because they didn't understand this. So you have in Luke, we're told that Mary Magdalene, she had demons, not one but many demons, cast out of her by Jesus in Luke chapter 8. It's the only mention of this Mary outside of the Passion narratives. She's only mentioned 12 times, but only once she's mentioned outside of the Passion narratives. This actually looms huge for Christianity because I'm fairly certain, I can't prove it, but in fact this person, this Mary, is probably the one who imagined seeing a resurrected Jesus. And that's why she's so prominent in the resurrection accounts. She's actually front and center in the resurrection accounts. I mean, she is the person. We have all sorts of Marys in the Christian Bible. But Mary Magdalene, she is the only one that's at front and center in every Passion narrative, because the Passion narratives are very famous, particularly the resurrection accounts, are very famous for having different women come to the tomb early Sunday morning. But what they all have in common is that Mary is there. And in John, she's the only one there. There's a reason for it. Why is she so noticeably absent everywhere else? This occurred to me when I was rabbi of Indonesia. In March of 2016, a very famous preacher, he was known as Peter the Great. I don't know if you know who he was. He was huge. He was a mega preacher. He'd fill stadiums of 40, 50,000 people. Huge. In fact, one of his assistant preachers repented and is a member of my congregation. He was enormous. He was a Christian, of course, a Pentecostal. And he was telling his followers that he's going to lead them to the promised land. Only one thing happened. In 2016, he dropped dead suddenly. He was that old. He was in his late 40s. I don't know, what a heart attack, of brain, whatever it was, he dropped dead like that. He was gone. If I tell you, it shook up the Indonesian world was just pow. And everyone, what do you mean? And people gave away their money. I mean, they have preachers that come with empty suitcases to Indonesia, Malaysia, and leave with full suitcases packed with cash. Same thing in India. This guy was big money, huge. He was huge. It was big. Many of his members who left Christianity, they knew exactly what was going on. They saw the point is that after he died, suddenly, it created a problem among his followers. I mean, I don't know how many followers he had, but he packed stadiums. He was huge. He was like in America they have a Benny Hinn. He was like that. So it was women that started proclaiming that he appeared to them, like just a few days after he died. But when that went off, I got it. I know exactly what happened there. So I'm taking your question. I'm amping up your question. The Torah was written by Moses, who was inspired by the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who knew very well what mental illness was. People were held accountable for sadness, for sure. Saul was sad, and that was not a good thing for him. But mental illness, HaKadosh Baruch Hu knew, the Almighty knows what mental illness is, and he knows it's not a demon. The writers of the Christian Bible, however, were the result of the Greco-Roman world and far beyond. This was not just a Greco-Roman thing. Among the Persians and the Far East, they all thought that people who we now know struggled with all kinds of neuroses and psychosis, mental illness, attributed to some sort of demon possession. And therefore, you find it all over the Christian Bible. You're not going to find it in the Jewish Bible, simply because the Jewish Bible was inspired by God and the Christian Bible was not. Great question.